Hey folks, so today we are going to talk about life lessons and introspection. We're going to start it off light with some of my life lessons. For plausible deniability, I am going to call these probably bad ideas. Maybe some of them won't be. I first said this 10 years ago. First do it, then do it right, then do it better. As engineers, designers, product people, we often get lost in perfectionism. And you'll get a lot of value out of getting comfortable, shipping things that are actually just good enough and iterating in them. Get your ideas out into the world. We all make mistakes, it's okay. The important part is getting back up on that attempt. Next. Time is your greatest asset. Use it wisely. Now, I often get asked, how do I know if I'm making the best use of my time? There will almost always be tasks that can fill up your time so you feel busy. The real trick here is making sure that you're working on the right things. If you want to move mountains, focus on tasks that will move the needle, even if that movement is a little bit small. This is what technical mastery looks like to me for some definition of it. Understand what gives you energy and what takes it away. It's really important for your well-being to have enough in your life that energizes you and helps keep you thriving. Keep an eye on that balance so you can be successful. It's also what energizes you that, could be dollar bills, could be anything. Figure out what energizes you. So that's it for our prelude, and we can dive into the actual talk. This talk is a little bit of a love letter to the last 30 years. So let's start it properly to set the mood. So let's talk about nostalgia. Something a lot of us can relate to is nostalgia, this wistful affection for the past. Whatever period of time you grew up in, there are probably sights, sounds, movies, and games that can take you back to when you were a kid. This is what a lit Friday night looked like in the 90s. You had Blockbuster, Pizza Hut, a Windows 95 upgrade box for some reason. And if you really wanted a properly lit night in the 90s, this is what you had. You had that Game Boy with a light expander and were begging everybody for AA batteries. It was beautiful. Now, gaming in the 90s was intense. I don't know if you remember this, but almost every ad had kids that were literally on the edge of their seats, as if they were playing the greatest game ever. This kid on the couch looks like he might need an exorcist. Now, this wasn't an ad for Mario or for Donkey Kong. This was an ad for this. This is a math game. Literally, it's a game to get better at arithmetic. It's the equivalent of you getting excited about opening up your calculator app. It's not that cool. Now, the 80s and 90s also saw a big boom in club life. Now, I personally, I was 15, 16. I wasn't too much into the club scene music-wise, but I was into a different kind of club, the Scholastic Book Fair. And so I was really excited. Anytime I had cash in my pocket and I could go and pick up some Goosebumps books. I saw a few people getting excited about that. But nostalgia is something we can all relate to. Now, speaking of nostalgia, let's talk about the pandemic. During the pandemic, many of us faced new challenges that were stressful or overwhelming. We had to worry about the virus, toilet paper, JavaScript, our families. One of these things is not like the others. For many of us, it was the first time we were properly working from home full time, and that came with its own challenges. Things like knowing, well, I have to work. I also have to do my laundry. I know I'm just going to do neither and feel bad about both. A year into the pandemic, I felt like dried up leaves on most of my calls. And I had to remind a lot of people, I'm not dead. This is just how I look now. So let's talk about debugging yourself. The pandemic meant that for many of us, we were left to our own thoughts. And in my case, I spent a lot of time thinking. I thought about my emotions. I thought about how much gratitude I had for still being here, my past, my future, my life lessons. And this led me to a deeper study on introspection. Now, in psychology, introspection is a way of observing your mental and emotional processes. It's all about finding yourself, learning about yourself in a structured way. This was originally proposed by William Wundt. There are lots of caveats around introspection, but it's a tool I still find really valuable for personal growth. Now, when you're trying to practice introspection, it's really important to stay away from self-rumination. We are constantly thinking about our thoughts, our emotions, and our memories, and those things can change over time, but introspection can still be useful. Now, if you're wondering, how do I even go about practicing introspection, I've got you covered. To help, I've got 5 prompts to consider for personal growth. Those were inspired by Oliver Cowlishaw. If it helps, think of them as a framework of sorts. So first question, ask yourself what you really want. This is important because you can find that what you think you want is what other people actually expect from you. Things that get you approval. That may not be what you personally want, what makes you happy or fulfilled. This question is powerful because it can, in some cases, change the direction your life is taking. Next, what am I avoiding? Sometimes what we're looking for is in the place we're least willing to look for it for reasons like anxiety or fear. Our emotions can direct our actions. It could be a message you're avoiding responding to because it's awkward, a bill you're not wanting to look at. But asking, what am I avoiding, can give you clarity of thought and help you understand why you're fearing things and maybe help you fear less. Next, what am I grateful for? Our brains have a negativity bias, so we tend to view our lives in terms of what we don't have, what we need, what we're missing out on. This can motivate us to make changes that can seem positive, but in the bigger picture might actually make us miserable. When you think about this question, your mind's probably going to jump to some canned answers. Things like, well, I'm grateful for food, and I'm grateful for water. And those things are perfectly okay, they're perfectly true, but look deeper for what you're actually grateful for. What am I afraid of? There may be paths you're not taking in life because of fear, and fear often sits in the background while you're trying to look away. When you look at the route that led you to fear, sometimes those fears can unravel, and by bringing conscious attention to them, you might be able to get a deeper understanding of them so you can confront them. And finally, what are my biggest strengths and flaws? Sometimes, especially during the pandemic, we can fall into this trap of self-loathing or being too focused on our flaws. And we may not have conscious awareness of strengths to balance that out. So think about your inherent qualities. It's totally healthy to acknowledge your limitations, but also important to have conscious awareness of what you bring to the table and are capable of. So during the pandemic, I thought a lot about introspection and life lessons. What were mine? What would others say if I asked them about theirs? This began a 2-year project where I asked some well-known names to self-reflect. You might be asking, well, what well-known names? Here's a hint. During the pandemic, like many of the folks here, I checked out my favorite movies, shows, and music from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. As I watched, I wondered if my heroes from this time had any of their life lessons. What learnings really stuck with them, and that really began this project. So let's learn some life lessons through the lens of nostalgia, starting off with movies, music, and computers. We're going to kick things off with Steve Wozniak. So someone in the tech industry who had a huge impact on my career is Woz. His humility and intelligence were impressive traits when I was growing up. In 1976, Woz and Steve Jobs founded Apple Computers with Woz's Apple I personal computer, and he's been a philanthropist for many decades helping shape the computer industry. Here's a recent clip of Woz.
I worked for a couple of weeks every night till about 4 in the morning, laying out the little things on a big drafting table that would eventually become this board. And when I got done, I realized I had to drill 8 holes in the board. And I said, you know what? If I had only designed it a little bit differently, then I would have only had 5 holes. I tore apart my entire design for another 2 weeks, every night till 4 in the morning, to get it just that perfect with only 5 holes, so you would never see the 3 missing. It had to be that artistically perfect to me, because it represents yourself when you do something, when you do a great design.
So when I asked Steve to share his biggest life lessons with me, in true humble fashion, he sent me 10 minutes of video on this. I picked just one segment on it for time purposes, but this is just quintessential Woz. Here's Steve Wozniak.
Hi, Addie. Your friend Steve Wozniak here. This is Woz, and I'm going to talk a little bit about things that are meaningful to me in both life and development of products and whatever work. Long ago, I was reading an article, about this guy, Sumner Redstone, head of Viacom, making $50 million deals right and left every day. And I said, whoa, would you want to be that person, that wealthy? Is that on the day you die, or would you rather be laughing about a fun thing, a joke you pulled, a prank you pulled on somebody? And I decided I'd rather be the person that was happy, that if I were dying, I'd feel better just joking about a prank I'd played. And so I decided that life wasn't about achievement, accomplishment. It was really about happiness. At least for me, that's how it was going to be. And if you have the right formulas and think it out, you can never lose in life. I came up with a formula that happiness to me was the sort of happiness you get when you smile, strong emotional feelings, or when you frown. So I said happiness equals smiles minus frowns, H equals S minus F. That led me to, always have a lot of fun, and probably always include fun along with your work in life, and avoid frowns. Just maybe don't care so much it's going to make you all distraught if it goes a certain way, or if something goes wrong, like your car gets dented, just go get it fixed. Get on the constructive path, and don't sit there, complaining for the rest of your life about it. Also, one thing that I learned in my life was, or that I felt like, and it came from teaching to my father, was to be liked. Not to get into conflicts and fights and say bad things about other people. If somebody's bad to you, you're good to them. Never hurt others, just don't feel you're competing with others. Do the best you can, and you are independent in yourself. And you could be in a situation where it's not appreciated, and maybe you have to change jobs or something, but generally that's the best philosophy, is don't hurt others, be good to them. Smile a lot. That came from the formula, happiness equals smiles minus frowns. Do things you like, go to concerts. If you feel like taking a day off, take a day off, but whatever makes you the happiest.
So research in positive psychology defines a happy person as someone who experiences frequent positive emotions like interest, joy, pride, and infrequent negative emotions like sadness or anxiety. Now, what we might eventually discover is that the idea of happiness is not as related to setting goals and achieving them as we might think, but in finding a sense of happiness and joy within ourselves that we can continue to express in our daily lives. So that was Steve. Switching gears up, let's talk a little bit about some movies from the 80s and 90s, starting off with Back to the Future. Now, Back to the Future is this tale of 80s teenager Marty McFly, who's accidentally sent back in time to 1955, and he inadvertently disrupts his parents' first meeting, and he attracts his mom's romantic interest. He's got to repair this damage by rekindling his parents' romance with the help of the eccentric inventor, Doc Brown, and then return to 1985. Here's a more recent clip of Doc Brown from a 1990s.
Shoes! I need shoes!
Well, I got these right here.
Does this power lace?
Not till 2015.
Not till 2015, sir.
This is 2015.
It's 2011, sir.
Great Scott! The timer circuits must have malfunctioned.
I don't know what that means, sir.
I love this movie, especially Doc Brown, who is someone who got me thinking about time and this idea of time being a big asset. Now, Doc Brown was brought to life by Christopher Lloyd. He, of course, starred in the Back to the Future movies. He starred as Uncle Fester in the Addams Family trilogy. And I asked Christopher over a few months, like, what were his biggest life lessons? And here's what he had to say.
Great Scott! Addie! Please excuse the crudity of this model, as I didn't have time to build it to scale, you know. My life advice, do something that makes your future bigger than your past. Remember that the future is what you make it, so make it a good one.
I love this quote. Your past does not define you, both your successes and your failures. Maybe you made some mistakes in your life, or maybe you had some great accomplishments 5 or 10 years ago. Neither of those things should stop you from being able to do something bigger, better, or just very different moving forward. Now, there were, of course, other stars in Back to the Future that made an impression. Michael J. Fox and Leah Thompson. Michael, of course, had an impressive career and then had to battle Parkinson's disease and rebound from that. But it's still hard. And here's his perspective on optimism.
Well, I went through a real crisis in 2018. And I was sitting on the floor and I was thinking, optimism, this sucks. This is only bad. And then as I came through it, I came to this conclusion. If you can find something to be grateful for, then optimism is sustainable.
So there's often always something real for us to be thankful for having. And if you don't think you have something to be grateful for, maybe keep looking. Because you don't just receive optimism. You can't wait for things to be great and then be grateful for that. You've got to behave in a way that promotes that mindset. And of course, we have Leah Thompson, the actress and director. I was always impressed by the sheer number of characters she played in Back to the Future, including Lorraine, including Maggie McFly, alongside Michael Schamus. Here's what Lorraine had to say when I asked her what her biggest takeaway was in life so far.
Hi, Addie. Leah here. Lorraine McFly. If you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. Thank you so much for being a fan. My best life lessons. Well, you know, one of the main things that's really helped me get through things is that when I'm feeling down, I try to reach out and help someone else. And then, weirdly, I don't feel down anymore. So I think that, you know, when you think that you're just doing good for other people, what you're really doing is doing good for yourself. So that's how I feel. And also, you know, life is a circle. Like, you know, you can't hold on to what was before. You have to kind of try to stay in the moment and know that things change, and try to be graceful with that and know that that's just the way it is.
When you help willingly, there are higher amounts of dopamine in the part of the brain associated with processing unexpected rewards. Now, that activation could explain why people who, you know, continue to give even when it costs them something. So when you go and you help somebody else, you get this positive feeling in return. And the person you've helped, that also gives them, you know, something to feel good about. So this can create a strong sense of things like belonging, connection, and community. Another one of my favorite movies was Gremlins. And the idea here was there was this kid, Billy Peltzer, who was given an adorable pet called Gizmo for Christmas. And he inadvertently broke the 3 important rules of caring for a mogwai, unleashing this horde of gremlins on a small town. In a nod to nostalgia, Mountain Dew brought back both Gizmo and Billy recently for one of their ads.
Want to try some of my Mountain Dew Zero Sugar?
Try.
It is tasty.
And just as good as the original, but without any sugar. Be careful.
Here's no careful.
What?
Hey, Dad, Mom wants...
It's been 20 or 30 years, still doesn't know how to look after a mogwai. So Billy was played by Zach Galligan, and here were his biggest life lessons.
Can you share some of your biggest life lessons? You know, that is such, you could write a book, and people have, about that. But to summarize quickly, the ones that have really stayed with me are the following. If you really want to be successful in life, you need to have at least 2 or 3 things that you're good at. And by that, I mean, maybe that's not the right way to say it. You need discipline, right? So that you make a plan and you stick to it. You need impulse control, you know, and you can't focus, you know, that's a huge problem too. So you need to control your impulses, be disciplined, very focused, pick one thing that you want to be super successful at, and then work really, really, really hard at that one thing, harder than just about anybody else, and you'll be successful. Perfect example of this, and you may not know this about me, but from 2006, 2015, I taught acting at NYU, and one of my students is now in the movie Top Gun Maverick, Miles Teller. He's been in a bunch of other movies, but I picked Top Gun Maverick because everyone's seeing it. It's doing so well. And when he showed up in 2006, he was kind of a scrawny kid, and you would never have assumed that this guy would do so well. But over the next 2 years, he took more classes, stayed later, you know, did more than just about any other student that I was teaching was doing. He was just outworking everybody. So in the end, it was kind of like, oh, you ran faster and you won the race? Duh. It's like, yeah, that's what you do.
So if you want to be successful in life, Zach says you need discipline, impulse control, and to work hard. If I could add only one more thing to this list, it would also be luck. Being in the right place at the right time can also play a large role in success, but the rest of this list is also really important. Now, shifting gears a little bit, let's go into the horror genre with A Nightmare on Elm Street. A lot of folks here have probably seen this series at some point. The basic idea is that there are these teenagers in a small town that are dropping like flies. They're in the grip of mass hysteria. There's a cop's daughter, Nancy Thompson, who's trying to trace the cause, finds out that it's this molester, Freddy Krueger, who was burned alive by angry parents many years before. Krueger comes back, and he's haunting the dreams of children, claiming their lives as his revenge. Now, when I was a kid, Nightmare on Elm Street actually genuinely terrified me. Let's take a look at Freddy returning for a guest appearance on The Goldbergs.
What the? My sweaters!
You got good taste, lady.
Whatever, I don't care what happens to me. I'm already living my worst nightmare.
Huh? I thought I was doing a pretty damn good job here.
No, you're great with the knifey hands and the melting candle face. It's just... Adam said he wished I wasn't his mother.
Oh, geez, that's an awful thing to say. I'm gonna kill him.
No. The more I think about it, I deserved what Adam said. I was terrible to Jackie's parents.
Parents? Who needs them? I never knew any of my fathers, and I turned out just fine.
I don't see how that applies to me, but I couldn't stand the Gearys because of the way they parented. But then they were able to help Adam, and I wasn't.
This is getting way too touchy-feely for this cowboy. It's time to die!
No.
The weird thing about Freddy Krueger is you almost have empathy for him by the end of the movies. Almost, but not quite. Now, Freddy Krueger was played by Robert Englund. He's also in the new series of Stranger Things and was just about to jump on a call for the show when I managed to catch his time. Here's Robert on his biggest life lessons.
Well, now, there he is. Hello, Addie. Robert Englund here, also known as Freddy Krueger, a.k.a. the man of your dreams. That's Mr. Krueger to you, so show some respect. I'll tell you, though, I'm getting up there. I'm an old dog now, and one thing I know is time. Time does speed up. You probably know that. I think you said you had teenagers, but It does seem to go faster, probably because when we're young, we hadn't been on this planet very long, and that's why everything seems slower, those long, endless summers, walks home from school, and homework, and everything seemed to take forever. But, you know, you want to try to be in the now, in the moment as much as possible. You know, that old saying, wake up and smell the coffee. But you also want to, you know, if you've got any leftover dreams and goals that you haven't completely exhausted or acted upon, remember, you don't have to do the main thing of whatever world that is that you might want to venture into. You don't have whatever world you want to maybe play in a little bit that you haven't already. You don't have to sort of aim for the center of it. You know, you can search out stuff that's in the periphery, because sometimes that might be where your gifts are at.
I like that Freddy Krueger's life lesson involved dreams. So be in the now and in the moment as much as possible. It's useful to find ways to be happy, be present, and enjoy life in the here and now as much as you can. It sounds kind of cliche, but it is true. How often do we get distracted? Distracted by ruminating on the past, worrying, having anxiety about the future, thinking about a million things happening on our phones or on social networks or elsewhere in our lives. We ultimately have to achieve some level of happiness, enough to satisfy that insatiable drive within us to continue wanting more and more. So find ways to enjoy the here and now. Continuing on with our theme of sci-fi and horror, next up we've got Game of Thrones. Now, it's very difficult to explain Game of Thrones in a talk to anyone, you know, without the incest. So I'm going to describe it like I'm 5 instead. Game of Thrones is this show about powerful families, kings and queens, knights and renegades, and they're playing this game for control of the 7 kingdoms of Westeros, and for some reason, an Iron Throne. Now, Lena Headey is a British actress. She gained international recognition for her portrayal of Cersei Lannister on the show, for which she received multiple awards. Lena's life lesson talks about why we should maybe try to minimize how much we stress about things.
Hey, Addie. My biggest life lessons. Well, I think it comes with getting older, but it's like, just worry less. I don't know if you're a worrier or an overthinker. I'm a pretty great both of those things. So, yeah, I think as I get older, I'm like, you can't worry about stuff. Doesn't change the outcome of anything. It just makes you a little crazy.
So there are common beliefs about worry that can compel us to do some things. Feelings like, well, if I worry, I'm never going to have a bad surprise. If I worry, I'll be safer. I show I care by worrying. Worrying motivates me. We need to differentiate between unproductive worry and productive concern and problem solving. Now, this all gets so much more nuanced. If you actually have clinical anxiety and so on, there's a lot more nuance to it. But in general, for most of us, I think it's useful to understand like the difference between this productive versus unproductive worrying. Next up, we've got Ghostbusters, a movie I think a lot of us watched when we were kids. One of my favorite characters in this show was Winston Zeddemore. His first on-screen appearance in Ghostbusters was when he responded to this Help Wanted advertisement with Janine interviewing him in the show, in the movie. And they were trying to deal with this like really big workload. There were a lot of ghosts. They were busting. And Zeddemore replied, well, if there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you say. I was really happy to see a lot of the cast return for Ghostbusters Afterlife. Here's a brief clip.
We're back at the original firehouse in Los Angeles where they shot the interior for the 1984 film and the sequel.
Ernie, when you walk in, you can come a little more straightforward.
The first time I came on the set with Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold, we had filmed part of the time in New York, and then we had come to Los Angeles, and where the New York set was kind of confining, this was like the ultimate set. And when I walk in here now, I remember that wave of coming in here and knowing that I was a part of something that that would be special. And now, 30 plus years later, the feeling is just as strong.
So Winston was played by Ernie Hudson, who did return for Ghostbusters Afterlife. And he has a perspective on life that questions if we really need more than we have to be happy.
Hello, everyone. Hi, this is Ernie Hudson, Winston Zedmore from Ghostbusters. Just finished busting some ghosts, but I want to take a moment to give a shout out. Adi Osmani asked me a really important question. He asked me to share my biggest life lesson from over the years. So here goes, everyone. Life to me is realizing that you already have everything that you will ever need to have a great life. Now, the biggest challenge in life is convincing yourself that that's true and believing it. And when you do realize that, you will realize that no one will ever offer you anything more than you already have, your humanity. And when someone is offering you something and asking you to compromise that basic quality that is you, you'll lose every time. So, trust yourself, know that you have everything you need, and as we say in Ghostbusters, just keep on busting.
Have you ever caught yourself thinking, I just need blank and I'll be happy? The hard truth is, if you don't know how to be happy with what you have, there's a possibility it's unlikely that you can buy anything that's going to make you happier in a sustained way over time. Understand where these urges come from. There are often some common threads here. Feelings of insecurity, a struggle with comparisons, deeply held beliefs about success. But ultimately, there's value in understanding like what makes you tick, what drives these urges. And thinking about this can be useful. Like, do these urges go away if you're not buying as much, that type of thing? Next up, we've got Clerks. Clerks was a pretty controversial movie when it first came out, grew to become a classic, and it's something I watched a lot when I was in college. If you haven't seen it before, the TLDR is that the story follows Dante and Randall, who are these potty-mouthed, bored out of their minds storekeepers. Between like dealing with customers, playing hockey on the roof, and dealing with their love lives, they also have to deal with these two guys, stoners Jay and Silent Bob. Silent Bob is played by Kevin Smith, who also wrote, directed, co-produced, and acted in the movie. He'd go on to do several related films like Mallrats, Chasing Amy, and Dogma, amongst others. I watched Kevin's movies for a long time, and I was grateful that I got to see him when he came to my hometown. So here's Kevin's life lesson that is very relevant for those of us that are creatives or are people who spend a lot of time on social networks.
Life lessons, what can I share with you? There are two paths in this life, Addie, creation and destruction. And the destruction paths are crowded as fuck because it's easy to tear shit down. It's easy to mock. It's easy to not create. Very easy. So, you know, since that's easy, those lanes are always crowded because everybody could use those lanes. Creativity lanes, the path of creativity, wide open all the time. Because at the end of the day, it takes a little of oneself to kind of create, to put oneself out there, to risk a little bit of yourself. And not everybody is up for that, but oh, it's so much more rewarding. So I always tell people, always choose the creation path. Like, you know, if you've got time to sit online and be like, this thing sucks, you've got time to be offline and creating something that doesn't suck. You know, it's one thing to tell people what's wrong. It's another thing to show people what your idea of a fix is, what's right, or something like that.
So creation requires people to imagine something that hasn't existed in a specific way. It asks you to put in energy. It asks you to focus. Destruction can shower from empty rage. You know, and by the way, with this particular quote, I do think there continues to be value with constructive criticism. But if you're just tearing things down for the sake of it, Maybe ask if that's the best use of energy. Maybe you can be creating something new with that energy instead and adding to the world. Switching gears up to a show, Knight Rider was a show that had a very special place in my heart. I used to watch it every Saturday afternoon with my sister when we were growing up. That said, I have a difficult time seeing Knight Rider being made in 2022 sometimes. It feels like it came from a different time where, self-driving cars actually self-drove and gas prices were affordable. But if you haven't seen this show before, it starts off with this character, Michael Long. He's a cop that's shot while he's investigating a case, and he's left for dead. This millionaire inventor, Wilton Knight, rescues him. He gives him a new identity, Michael Knight, and he gives him this indestructible car, Kit. Together, they apprehend criminals who are beyond the reach of law. In another nod to nostalgia, I was happy to see Michael Knight return for one more outing in an ad.
What's the emergency?
Hello, officer. My name is Michael Knight. I think Kit is being held against his will.
Is it your child, sir?
No, my car. I was just talking to him.
Hold on, sir. Miriam, Candy Kit is not a child. Sir, you say you're on the phone with a child or a car?
With my car. Kit. He talks. Now, are you going to help me find him or what?
Sir, please. We are working here, okay?
We are working here? Okay.
Michael Knight was, of course, played by David Hasselhoff, nicknamed the Hoff. Very often it's said that we find excuses to not make time for others, especially true if you're someone that's busy. David shared his guidance on this in his life lesson.
Hey, Andy, David Hasselhoff. You know, what I've learned about in life is you got to reach out. You got to be there. You got to show up, I saw a little kid, and that little kid had cancer, and I asked the parents, why do you believe in God? And they said, because you came. They found me, and they believed in God because of me. How cool is that? So anyway, just show up, and do the best you can, and never give up.
The first few times I saw that, I wondered if there was a little bit too much ego in there, but I do think the underlying message is actually legit. Showing up at times is hard, and the value isn't immediately obvious, because by definition, showing up means that you are sacrificing something else to make someone else happy. That could be your time, your energy, your emotions, your comfort, your pleasure. In our minds, time is one of our most valuable assets, and giving up a few hours to help somebody else can feel like we're giving up too much of ourselves. If you think about what we spend our time on, yes, we spend a lot of our time on important things, but we also spend our time browsing Reddit, checking out YouTube, doing silly things. And sometimes if you compare that versus things you could be doing to help others, the return on your investment can be immeasurable in some cases. Now, we talked a little bit about movies, and we talked about Steve Wozniak, but let's talk a little bit about sports real quick. When I was growing up, the name Tony Hawk was synonymous with skateboarding. He's one of the best professional skateboarders of all time. He gained fame for completing the first 900 move in skateboarding, and his licensed video games have become very, very popular. I was just checking it out for the PS5 yesterday. And he's widely considered one of the most successful modern vertical skateboarders. If you don't follow Tony Hawk on Twitter, it's worth it just for the number of times every week people dismiss thinking he's Tony Hawk. They'll do double takes like, you look like Tony. No, you're not Tony Hawk. So I asked Tony what his biggest life lessons were, and I found his answer regarding mistakes resonated a lot with me.
Hey, Addy, it's Tony Hawk. I know you asked me what is my biggest life lesson or what are my biggest life lessons. I think the biggest thing I learned through all the years of trial and error is to embrace your failures, embrace your mistakes, because those are the learning lessons. Those are the moments where it will define you, and if you're ready to persevere or to just give up. And I feel like a lot of people take some sort of setback as a sign that they shouldn't continue on, and I take those things as a way of figuring out what I'm capable of and how to do it better the next time. Or maybe use part of that mistake and use it to your advantage. I know that seems odd, but my best example is doing skate tricks. Sometimes I'll try a new skate trick and something goes wrong, but it ends up, my board spins a different direction or something happens and I think, oh wait, maybe I should just try it that way. And it becomes a whole new thing. So I know that it's hard to convey that into other life lessons, but I think there is something there. And sometimes you learn what you're best at through those mistakes. So
It's healthy to look at failures as a road and not a wall. And we only learn from our mistakes if we do something about them, if we actively try to learn from them. This is just one more way that it's important for us to be active agents in life. Many of us believe that we're automatically going to learn from our mistakes, like, oh, hey, I messed up. I'm never going to do that again, obviously, and that's just not how that works. You have to re-engage with the ideas that were hard for you. You've got to re-examine the questions that you missed, and you have to keep trying. Our last sci-fi example is going to be Star Trek. This is wildly popular. It's had many incarnations from The Next Generations all the way through to Picard and Strange New Worlds, which is awesome, by the way. One of my favorite things about rewatching Next Generation during the pandemic was the sheer number of Star Trek memes that are out there these days. They're just all so bad, they're kind of good. They really just don't get any better than any of these, honestly. Now, The Next Generation featured a crew including Patrick Stewart as Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Jonathan Frakes, Jean Delancey as Q. I had a chance to speak with different members of the cast. For time, we'll talk about life lessons from two of them. But before that, let's just get a refresher on Season 2 of Picard. These two characters were both in it.
What the hell is happening here?
Excellent question, Jean-Luc.
Oh dear, you're a bit older than I imagined. Mon capitaine, how I've missed you.
Q.
Welcome, my friend, to the very end of the road not taken.
Time has been broken.
We can save the future, and I will get us home together.
So the first person who we're going to look at is John Delancey, who played Q. Of all of the lessons that have been shared so far today, this has probably been the one that has actually impacted me personally the most in the last couple of months. So let's play it.
I think it's really important to take risks. And I don't mean just crazy risks like driving fast on slippery roads or stupid stuff like that. I mean it's to work out of your comfort zone. What else do I think? I think probably the biggest one is to say yes. Opportunities come as little things in life. Little, do you want to have dinner? Yes. Yes. Do you want to go on a trip to, a place that you might never have thought to go and it costs a little bit more than you wanted to, and why am I going there? Yes. Yes. Say yes. It's much better than saying no. That's my biggest one for you.
So great, otherwise unforeseen opportunities often come from risk-taking. We tend to view risk-taking negatively because it's often regarded as dangerous and even unwise. But while some risks certainly don't pay off, it's important to remember that some do. Reframing risks as opportunities to succeed rather than a path to failure can be valuable. Of course, as John said, we're not talking about crazy risks. We're talking about some of those risks where it's just a little bit working out of your comfort zone. Another person that was in that trailer was Michelle Hurt, who plays Rafi in Picard. And she comments on the importance of advocacy.
You have to be your own biggest fan. Because if we wait around for somebody else to be our fan, we might be waiting for the rest of our lives. So we sort of silence the people who are negative, who aren't supporting us. We can uplift the people who are supporting us, but the truth is we have to support ourselves. Say nice things to yourselves. Be kind, be gentle. And the more we do that to ourselves, for ourselves, the better we can do that for others.
So being your biggest fan and your biggest advocate is actually really important. Nobody can advocate for you as well as you can. Nobody knows your work as well as you do. Nobody knows the value of what you're doing as well as you do. Self-advocacy is incredibly important in several areas of your life, not just the workplace. I think it's important to get comfortable highlighting your accomplishments and your skills. It's also a great way to get your team, your manager, your organization, other people you work with to also be aware of that work and the value of it. It might feel awkward the first few times, but it does get easier in practice. Closing us up is going to be Dionne Warwick. So Dionne Warwick is a singer, an actress, and a television host. 3 of her songs, Walk On By, Alfie, and Don't Make Me Over, have been inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. If you'd like a refresher on Walk On By, here it is.
If you see me walking down the street and I start to cry each time we meet, walk on by, walk on by, make believe you don't see the tears, let me grieve in private, 'cause each time I see you I break down and cry.
So Dionne's life lesson was pretty short and sweet, but was also important. Here it is.
Hey, Addie. What is my lifelong lesson? I've had so many. Anyway, I guess the only thing I could say is I've always been true to who I am. That's the best lesson I could ever learn or ever give to anyone else to probably practice. Okay?
So always stay true to yourself. When we leave only the parts of ourselves we deem to be good or strong or smart, and that's what we show people, whether it's on stage, whether it's on social networks, we reject the parts of ourselves that make us real. That can set you up for inauthenticity. We start hiding what's real and showing off what's sparkly instead, but that perfection can feel fake. Authenticity means that you are enough, and it's enough to be who you are to get what you want. That's it for my life lessons. I hope that if you take nothing else from this talk, consider self-reflection. What do you want? What are you avoiding? What are you afraid of? And what are your greatest strengths and flaws? With that, I've been Adi Osmani. Thank you so much.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Eddie. So, we have a couple of minutes, right, for Q&A? Yes, a couple of minutes, I was told. So, thank you so much for this. It's been very inspiring and very powerful messaging. I'm thinking, it's always the same story for me, because I always feel like we get lost sometimes in these endless conversations in front end. And we have these camps, and we're doing, this framework, or we're doing this methodology, or we're kind of using these tools, or this and that. And it seems to me personally, this has been maybe kind of my observation maybe over the last few years. It just doesn't matter that much at all, because there are more important things in life. And I'm wondering, so as we're getting kind of stuck sometimes in these conversations, and we stay in front end, and it's very hard to follow front end. It's like things are happening all the time, so you can get excited about it all the time. How do we not get lost in it?
I have two answers.
What is your answer to that?
I have two, along the lines of I only have bad advice. I have two answers to this. The first is that, especially when we're thinking in terms of frameworks or technologies that we are very close to, the most important thing in those discussions is thinking about the user. We need to think about the user experience, and then walk backwards to the technology. That's also always got to be the focus. And the second is that the reality is that there are a lot more important things often happening in the world. If we're lucky, we get to contribute to some of them. If we're not, maybe we're focused on other things, and that's totally fine. There's always value in trying to find out how can you contribute, how can you help to move along the greater good. And I think that that can help bring a little bit of balance sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have some questions from the chat, and again, thank you so much for writing those questions in the Google Doc. Two interesting questions that came up. What advice would you have for managing time better?
So I'll extend a thought I shared earlier. Most of us are not intentional with how we use our time. If you think about it, there was a great conversation some of the speakers and I were having in the last couple of days, and I think it was Brad Frost that said, you only have something like 4,000 weeks on this earth. Or is it like 4,000 weeks, 4,000 days? It is a finite amount of time. And it becomes, once you realize that, it's almost freeing because you have no choice. You can't defeat physics. You have no choice but to start making better use of your time. I think that there are a lot of times in our weeks where we're not carving out time enough for our families, for our friends, for our health. That's all important. How do you manage your time better? Get better at managing your calendar. Carve out those times for the things that are actually important. If you don't carve it out, nobody else is going to.
Yeah, right. Two more questions now. We have more and more coming up. Do we have time for two more questions? Yes? Okay. What was the most memorable mistake you're glad you made because of the lessons you've learned from it?
What was the mistake I made that I've learned the most from? I think the mistake that I made that I learned the most from was it's very, very important not to judge people based on limited information about them. There was someone who I once met at work who I was much younger. I formed instant impressions about them that were negative. I thought, oh, I don't want to hang out with this person. That person ended up becoming one of my best friends. And if I hadn't taken off that cap of like being judgmental and actually giving them a chance and spending time with them, we wouldn't have become friends. We wouldn't have had all like great memories over the last 10 years. So I think it's important not to judge prematurely.
Okay. And maybe the last one here. A lot of the advice presented comes from a place of privilege. How can people apply some of these lessons when your life has less leeway for failure, taking risks, or following a passion?
I think that that's a very valid point. I think that there are a subset of lessons here that apply even when you're very, very tight on time. I recall back 10, 15 years ago, I didn't really have time. I was working, I had kids, had social obligations, I was trying to speak, was doing all sorts of things, and I found it very difficult to find any time to take risks, to explore opportunities. And what I ended up doing was trying to find ways to steal time out of my day. It all comes back to that intentionality around your time. So I would steal if I was on a bus, if I was in a car, if I was doing anything where I could do async work, I'd start working on a book or I'd start working on an article.
Yeah, you do write books quickly, I was told.
But
I mean, really, it came along just very, very quickly, and it's a really big book all about image optimizations. I think there is more coming up, I heard.
I feel I'm being pre-committed to books now. I've never intentionally written a book, by the way. They always start out as like an article, and then it just gets way too long over time.
Okay, that then becomes the book, right? That makes sense. But also maybe the final one. So the last 2 years, we all have been going through some things, right? What were some of the biggest life lessons that you have personally now learned, which kind of shifted the way of how you're working, how you're living, how you organize your life, and so on?
So 4 or 5 years ago, I had a really bad problem with workaholism. I lived for work. Everything was about work. And especially in the last couple of years, the pandemic emphasized this even more. you should work in order to, work in order to live, don't live to work. I, especially in the last 2 years, got a much deeper appreciation for family, for the value of spending time with your kids, the people close to you, building up those friendships. Not getting to see people for a long time also kind of emphasized that. And so my biggest lesson was like, value people, value humanity, embrace it.
Right, these are strong words for the ending. Well, thank you so much, Eddie, for being with us. And I think, again, a round of applause for Eddie Osmani, everyone. Thank you so much, Eddie.
Thank you. It's good seeing you.